I have mastered the shh. It works every time. Hi, everybody. Welcome to the Boston Foundation. I'm Mary Jo Meissner. I'm Vice President for Communications and Public Affairs. It's my pleasure. Oh, hey! Awesome. My pleasure to welcome you here this evening. We are getting started a little bit later because we're delighted that the Mayor of Boston, Mayor Martin J. Walsh, is going to be joining us, so he should be here soon. So we're going to get started. We're most fortunate to be hosting tonight, I think, one of the few events this month that did not need to be postponed because of the snow. We've had our share of that, all of us. So kudos to us for choosing February 19th, and kudos to all of you for showing up. Thank you very much. One person I do want to acknowledge who is here with us, and thank you for showing up, is Commissioner Evans. Thank you so much for being here. I should have said police commissioner, but I think we all know that. He's delighted at the weather, unlike the rest of us. So in addition to being the year of the blizzard, 2015 is also the Boston Foundation Centennial. And we are holding a number of events in recognition of this important watershed for the foundation. A couple of weeks ago, we held a major conference called The Shape of the City that included a presentation on our newest Boston Indicators Project data and explored critical issues affecting the future of Boston, from income inequality to global warming to infrastructure investment, which is certainly front and center right now. We've also been hosting a series of centennial dinners. Some of you have already been involved in some of those, and we're going to be doing many more throughout our centennial year. These are co-hosted with organizations for which the Boston Foundation has been there at the beginning with critical early support. And we're in those dinners, we're exploring also the future of the most important sectors of life in the city and having wonderful conversations on everything from the media to performing arts to climate change and immigration reform. And we have some other signature events that are going to be coming out throughout the year, and we'll keep you informed on that. But tonight is about our history. We are delighted to have all of you here for the release of our book, The Boston Foundation in the City of Ideas. We would like to thank everyone who contributed to this book, including our editorial consultants, Jim Vrabel and Susan Wilson, our wonderful photographer, Richard Howard. At least a third of the photos in this book were taken by Richard. And our peerless graphic designer, Kate Canfield. Kate, where are you? Yay, right there. But first and foremost, at the top of the list of whom we are most grateful is our Senior Director of Publications and Marketing, Barbara Hindley. Barbara has been the keeper and the teller of the Boston Foundation history for 30 years. She's the author of this magnificent book, and to her we all owe a great depth and a round of applause. So to give you a sense of what we're going to do, we're going to first hear from Barbara. She's going to do a little history presentation for you all. Then we hope Mayor Walsh will have joined us by that point. And finally, Paul Grogan, our peerless leader, the president and CEO of the Boston Foundation, will give closing remarks. And after the program, Barbara and Paul will be signing books for all of you who would like a signed copy. And there's more refreshments. And, of course, there's birthday cake. So with that, I'd like to introduce Barbara Hindley, the author of The Boston Foundation, the City of Ideas, to give us a little slice of the history of the Boston Foundation, which is deeply interwoven with the history of our beloved city of Boston.
have a little joke at the beginning that was supposed to be for the mayor, so if he arrives, we'll be able to do it. First, a few things about the year of our founding, 1915. That rascal, James Michael Curley, dubbed the mayor of the poor, is serving his first term as the mayor of Boston. And if Mayor Walsh were here, I would say, Mayor Walsh, you have inherited the Curley desk, but you have also inherited something else. During the Great Depression, Mayor Curley hired men for $5 a day to shovel the snow on Boston streets. Back to 1915. Bostonians are riding the first subway system in America. Yes, the infrastructure is that old. They were dressing rather more elegantly, I have to say, than we do today. And on the city's streets, automobiles are still vying for space with horse-drawn carts. The Custom House Tower is completed and will remain the tallest building in Boston for the next 30 years. Not a good sign for city building, actually. And Babe Ruth plays his first full season with Boston Red Sox. And yes, they win the 1915 World Series. We won't talk about what happens after that. 70% of Boston's residents are either first generation or foreign-born immigrants, with 11,000 arriving through the Port of Boston in 1915 alone. The North End is so overcrowded, it is described as all bedrooms. Its density is compared to that of Calcutta, India. Boston is an intellectual center for the suffrage movement. But that same year, sadly, Massachusetts votes down a referendum to give women the vote. Oh, welcome. Welcome, welcome, welcome. I feel I should start over. All right. We're starting over. Just for you, Mayor Walsh. Okay. First, a few things about the year of our founding, 1915. That rascal, James Michael Curley, dubbed the mayor of the poor, is serving his first term as mayor of Boston. Mayor Walsh, I understand that you inherited the Curley desk. It seems you have inherited something else from Mayor Curley. During the Great Depression, he hired men for $5 a day to clear the streets of Boston. I'm sure it's costing you a tad more today. And in fact, actually, we have a little present for you that is related to this. We couldn't resist. So back to 1915. I'll rush through this since people have heard the but. Bostonians are riding the first subway system in America. Yes, the infrastructure is that old. They were dressing rather more elegantly, we think, than we do today. On the city's streets, automobiles are still vying for space with horse-drawn carts. The Custom House Tower is completed and will remain the tallest building in Boston for 30 years. Not a good sign for city building. And Babe Ruth plays his first season with the Boston Red Sox. And yes, they win the 1915 World Series. 70% of Boston's residents are either first generation or foreign-born immigrants, with 11,000 arriving through the Port of Boston in 1915 alone. The North End is so overcrowded, it is described as all bedrooms. Its density is compared to that of Calcutta's. Boston is an intellectual center for the suffrage movement, but that same year, Massachusetts votes down a referendum to give women the vote. And William Monroe Trotter leads thousands through the streets of Boston to protest the opening of the film Birth of a Nation, scenes of which glorify the Ku Klux Klan. It is part of Trotter's work organizing Boston's growing Black population as a result of the first Great Migration from the South. Into this turbulent scene, the Boston Foundation is quietly created as the city's first philanthropy. It is founded by a father and son, Charles E. Rogerson, president of Boston Safe Deposit and Trust Company, and Charles M. Rogerson, the first hero of our story, a young lawyer who will go on to serve as director for the next 30 years. There are no precedents for Rogerson's work. Even the large private foundations such as Rockefeller and Carnegie are just a few years old. He had to create the entire process for making grants. From its earliest days, the foundation has women on its board. The first is Sarah Louise Arnold, Dean of Simmons College. She can't vote for president, but she can vote for grants at the Boston Foundation. In 1916, the foundation receives a magnificent bequest of $4 million from a man named James Longley, making it the first community foundation in the country with the resources to make grants, and this went on for many years. Although it is a tremendous amount of money, some $85 million in today's dollars, the foundation really only has the resources to respond to human need, and immediately the need is enormous. In these early days, World War I is a frightening reality for the city. The harbor becomes a major point of embarkation for troops and is in real danger of attack by German submarines. It is protected by nets and submerged bombs. The foundation's first grants go to war work, such as the Women's Commission of the War Department, and others assisting people whose lives are being torn apart by the war. It also begins a long tradition of large annual support of all of the city's hospitals, including one that floats. In 1918, those hospitals are forced to erect tents on their lawn to treat the victims of the Spanish flu, which kills 4,000 Bostonians. Rogerson also invests heavily in the settlement houses that are in almost every neighborhood, serving immigrants in an environment that is hostile to newcomers. Most are run by highly educated and dedicated women. Rogerson believes these settlement houses can actually solve the problem of urban poverty because they combine service with advocacy. By far, the most famous settlement worker is Amelia Earhart, who works at the most famous Boston settlement house, Denison House, in the South Cove area, supported heavily for years by the foundation. Once, she even flies over Boston dropping leaflets for an event there. Today, I suppose we'd call that littering. Rogerson's hopes of making a permanent debt in poverty are derailed, however, when the great bull market crashes and the Depression hits. For years, virtually all funding goes to direct relief as 1/3 of Bostonians lose their jobs, and people throughout the city are pushed to the limits of their ability to survive. Eventually, Charles Rogerson himself becomes depressed about the kind of philanthropy he is forced to practice, writing that the foundation is holding a bucket to catch the overflow of distress rather than reaching up to shut off the spigot. In a few short years, however, he watches as Boston is swept up in another world war. And again, grants must go to helping people simply cope. The good news is that there are jobs, and not just for men. For the first time, you see grants going to daycare for the children of working women. Charles Rogerson lives to see D-Day, but he dies before the war is over, and a public servant named Arthur Roch becomes director. From his office downtown, he looks out on a Boston that is in a miserable state of decay. The turmoil of 2 world wars and the Great Depression had masked the fact that Boston was a dying city. Even the Globe called it a hopeless backwater, a tumbled-down has-been of a city. Jobs have gone south, literally, and tens of thousands have moved to the suburbs, leaving a city that is home to a few wealthy families and many people struggling with poverty in neighborhoods characterized by blight. But Mayor John Hines, who finally unseats Curley, dreams of a new Boston and takes advantage of federal urban renewal funds flowing into cities. In the name of clearing slums, entire neighborhoods are razed, most notoriously the West End, which looks like a nuclear bomb hit it. In the 1950s, while the foundation does fund some of the urban renewal work, it continues to support settlement houses and hospitals, specifically Children's Hospital, which has to respond to polio. The epidemic is so pervasive that iron lungs the size of rooms are erected to treat young patients. In 1959, however, a stunning, unexpected bequest changes everything. A reclusive financier named Albert Stone leaves his entire fortune to the foundation. The newspapers love the story, calling Stone a man no one knew. Never met him, says head of foundation, which got huge gift. When the dust settles, his gift amounts to some $20 million. Now the foundation has the capacity to change its entire approach. In 1961, the board appoints Bill Bender as director. He is a former dean of admissions at Harvard and credited with diversifying the student body there. It was a shrewd choice, wrote Anthony Lewis in his Pulitzer Prize-winning book, Common Ground, adding that Bender was brilliant and in perfect tune with those strenuous times. Soon, under Bender, the foundation is reinforcing, even prefiguring, Washington's social experiments and begins a long tradition of seeding innovation. Bender and Mayor John Collins worked together to launch Action for Boston Community Development, which becomes the city's official anti-poverty program. Collins is busy making former Mayor John Hines' dreams of a new Boston a reality. But something else is going on. Now the people themselves are organizing to transform their neighborhoods from within. In the center of this photo is the great community organizer, Melnia Cass. The election of John F. Kennedy and the civil rights movement are energizing homegrown community leaders. Residents in Boston's increasingly diverse inner city neighborhoods are engaged in a process of human renewal, and the Boston Foundation stands firmly behind them. It supports a pioneering program called Operation Exodus, organized by Black parents to bus their children from inferior schools in their neighborhoods to better schools in white neighborhoods. When Martin Luther King comes to Boston in 1965 and leads a march to draw attention to poverty and de facto segregation in the schools, he says, "I would be dishonest to say Boston is Birmingham or that Massachusetts is Mississippi, but it would be irresponsible of me to deny the crippling poverty and injustice that exist in some sections of this community. The vision of the new Boston must extend into the heart of Roxbury. Boston must become a testing ground for the ideal of freedom." The Boston Foundation clearly agrees. Since 1922, it had funded the Urban League. Now support goes to the Muriel and Otto Snowden Freedom House in Roxbury, and a fine arts school launched by Elma Lewis, who later becomes the first African-American woman of the foundation's board. Bender also makes a risky, deep investment in the first community development corporation in Boston, today's Community Builders. And he supports Puerto Rican activists in the South End who stand up to the bulldozers and win the right to build their own housing, which becomes Via Victoria. Bender even provides critical early funding for the highly unpopular ideas of building an aquarium on the dirty old waterfront of all places and restoring Faneuil Hall Marketplace. Why would anyone want to do that? In Bender's final annual report in 1968, he writes movingly about his own reaction to the assassinations of Martin Luther King and Robert Kennedy and the Vietnam War, concluding, "Perhaps what we most need beyond commitment and action is stamina, the ability to stick it out through turbulent times. With patience, courage, tolerance, and reasonable faith in the basic decency and goodwill of most Americans, black and white, and in our ability to build a better society by rational, peaceful means. When Bill Bender dies rather suddenly in 1969, he is succeeded by another progressive former dean of admissions at Harvard, Frederick Glimp. In one of his first acts, Glimp responds swiftly when the great educator and activist Hubie Jones draws his attention to the fact that some 10,000 children are not being educated by the Boston public schools because they have a disability or they cannot speak English. He provides major funding for what becomes Mass Advocates for Children, which leads to our state's groundbreaking laws guaranteeing education for all children. Around this time, a charismatic young politician named Kevin White is elected mayor. Things are looking up for Boston, and Mayor White is starting to talk about building a world-class city. An early test of his leadership comes when Judge J. Arthur Garrity determines that Boston schools are indeed practicing de facto segregation and issues the first of his desegregation orders. When the buses start rolling, the foundation goes into high gear, creating an emergency fund to promote community dialogue, train bus volunteers, and keep children safe. It goes on to make deep investments in the first community health centers, taking a chance on a new idea that eventually leads to the strongest health network in the country. When Fred Glimp heads back to Harvard, Gino Bellotti takes on the foundation's leadership. I hear some cheers for Gino. Having grown up poor in an orphanage, he brings a special understanding to his role. In his first annual report, he expresses alarm at what he calls radical Reagan-era funding cuts, which, as he puts it, have shattered the long-held expectations of the nonprofit sector. By this time, Boston is becoming more and more diverse. African Americans make up some 22% of the population, and Latinos more than 6%. Under Bellotti's leadership, the foundation goes on to have a profound effect on two areas of life in the city: the environment and education. A university case study has been written about Gino Bellotti's central role in the cleanup of Boston Harbor by funding Conservation Law Foundation to bring the lawsuits to stop the pollution and helping to launch Save the Harbor, Save the Bay. And with funding and support from the foundation, the historic Boston Compact is signed, engaging businesses and colleges in strengthening Boston's schools. The foundation also spearheads the founding of the Boston Plan for Excellence. In November of 1984, Boston's nonprofit community is shocked by the news of the sudden death of Gino Bellotti as the result of a heart attack. He has led the foundation for just 5 years. After reeling from the loss, the chair of the foundation's board, Dwight Allison, sees an opportunity. He encourages Anna Faith Jones, who is Bellotti's associate director, to become the first African-American woman to lead a major community foundation. Her sensitivities as a woman of color, he says, add a new dimension to the foundation's efforts to define its responsibilities. Those efforts soon lead to the foundation's very first initiative, the Poverty Impact Program. $10 million is directed to maternal and infant health care, teenage pregnancy, employment and training, and urban parks and public spaces. Jones says, the parks piece is included to emphasize the importance of place in people's lives. Eventually, the investment contributes to a rebirth of the city's green spaces. The foundation continues to seed innovation through early funding of Boston AIDS Consortium, becoming a leader among community foundations nationally for its response to the epidemic. It provides critical early investments in programs advocating on behalf of the homeless and community organizing for workers in Chinatown and other neighborhoods, as well as mutual assistance agencies launched by immigrants and refugees who are arriving from Vietnam and Cambodia and those fleeing brutal wars in El Salvador and Guatemala. The foundation also commissions the first survey of poverty in Boston, which reveals that while more than 20% of African Americans and 8% of whites struggle with poverty, Latinos are experiencing the highest rates of all. Almost half of Boston's Latinos and 3/4 of Latino children are living in poverty. Some 75% of those interviewed work, and virtually everyone says they want to work. Through a new initiative called the Boston Persistent Poverty Project, a forerunner of the Boston Indicators Project, the foundation decides to put a human face on the statistics, holding a series of community roundtables with those experiencing poverty. Anna Faith Jones attends many of the listening sessions herself, as does the chair of the board, Frida Garcia, who is here with us tonight, I believe. I'm not sure. I have not seen her. She was intending to come. In Jones' final annual report, she writes, "We believe that a true community is much more than a collection of individuals who happen to live in the same area. Rather, it is an extended family of people connected by common aspirations who look to each other for support." She concludes, at the center of this community is the Boston Foundation. By the time Anna Faith Jones retires in 2001 after 15 years of leadership, the Boston Foundation has a strong reputation in the nonprofit and philanthropic communities. Its staff has grown to 40, and it is moving to new offices in the Back Bay. In addition to its endowment, the Permanent Fund for Boston has numerous donor-advised funds and a growing community of donors who are deeply involved in their philanthropy with the support of professional donor services staff. Under Jones, the very structure of the foundation has changed. It no longer has trustee banks handling its funds. Now it has control of its own assets and is guided by a diverse and engaged board. The state of the city is strong, too. As early as 1998, the New York Times ran an article titled "Boston Leading a Renewal of Old Northern Cities." The article begins, "Boston, of course, would never do anything so uncouth as to boom." Then it proceeds to describe the Big Dig, a new seaport district, and an unmistakably big city skyline as examples of Boston doing just that. By 2001, Boston is poised for a new century that will be dominated by technological innovation and communication. Under Mayor Thomas M. Menino, blight has virtually been eliminated from the city, but too many people are still living in poverty, and too few are prepared to benefit from what is being called the new global economy. As the board considers who should take the helm, they set out to find someone who can expand the foundation's role in the community to include civic leadership. In Paul Grogan, they find the leader they are looking for. I won't detail the accomplishments of the last 14 years, except to say that through its civic leadership, the foundation now strives not only to respond to need and seed innovation, but to change the very systems that affect the lives of everyone in our region. It regularly commissions and publishes new research, grounded in its own Boston Indicators Project, bringing people together to discuss the findings and working with policymakers on critical new legislation. It has played a central role in sweeping reforms to K-12 public education and the state's community college system. Its public policy work has helped to pump new resources into the state's cultural sector, smart growth housing, and even municipal budgets. Its grant-making and other work is having an impact on 5 areas the Boston Foundation feels can support our vibrant neighborhoods and help people thrive: education, health, neighborhoods, jobs, and arts and culture. As the Foundation's centennial approaches and it begins to take stock, more than anything, it recognizes the central role that its donors have played, especially those who have strengthened the Permanent Fund for Boston, from the major benefactors I mentioned earlier to Edith Ashley, who left a fund that has generated millions for people with disabilities, to a famous social worker named Harriet Bartlett, who made a major bequest simply for community building, to beloved community leader David Pocross, whose fund will benefit our city's children forever. In the midst of the Great Depression, the Foundation's very first director was frustrated because, with limited funds, he felt he was holding a bucket to catch the overflow of distress rather than reaching up to shut off the spigot. Because of the generosity of our donors and the Foundation's role as a civic leader, I believe that if Charles Rogerson were here tonight, he would say the Boston Foundation finally has its hand on that spigot. Now we would like to play a very brief video created for us by the wonderful organization Northern Light Productions.
Dream, baby, dream. Dream, baby, dream. Come on and dream, baby, dream. Come on and dream, baby, dream. Gotta keep the fire burning. Come on, we gotta keep the fire burning. Come on, we gotta keep the fire burning. Come on, dream, baby, dream. Come open up your heart. Come on and open up your heart. Come on and open up your heart. Come on, dream, baby, dream. Come on, dream on, baby. 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 Dream, baby, dream.
Well, now you know why Barbara Hindley is such a treasure, and her contributions to the foundation are enormous, have been over many years, but I think during this centennial, her contributions to this city are incredible. We are enormously complimented by this crowd tonight. We know what we're all dealing with in terms of life in the city these days, and that all of you are here in such numbers and so many partnerships and friendships in the room. We're really profoundly grateful that you are here. And it's particularly noteworthy that our mayor is here. It's beyond obvious that his plate is very, very full. So we're really touched that Mayor Martin Walsh has decided to come by and share a few thoughts with us. And Mayor, I want to be the first to present you with your copy of the book, The Boston Foundation and the City of Ideas. And what I say in the inscription is, Mayor, you'll write the next chapter. Mayor Marty Walsh.
Thank you, Paul. I can't wait to go home and look at the book, I'll tell you that. Bob, you did an incredible job. I'll tell you, the pictures and the story, that was absolutely incredible. It's a shame that Paul and myself are following you speak, and we should have went first. But I want to thank you all, and Mary Jo, thank you for everything. And I want to, first of all, congratulate the Boston Foundation on your 100th anniversary, and really understanding, as you saw the video, the impact the Boston Foundation has had in so many different areas of this city. And as I look out at the crowd, I see a lot of faces that have been working on the issues that were in the videos, whether it was in the 70s, 80s, or 90s, certainly carrying on the work from the people that were earlier in the video. Thank you for your work as well. I want to thank you for everything. The book, the Boston Foundation, City of Ideas, what a great title. It says it all. It really says it all. And you know, I've had the opportunity to be the mayor now for 13 months, and I know that Before that, I was a state representative. And the Boston Foundation was so important in so many different ideas as far as giving you a side of a point of view that we might not otherwise think. And I would look forward to the reports as a state representative and as mayor of the city of Boston. One of my first meetings at the foundation, I came over and I met with Paul, but then Mary Jo grabbed me outside and she gave me a stack of pamphlets like this. And she started going through each of them from like the last, I think, 100 years. And I said, I've seen them all. And she said, where? I said, well, you send them to us at the State House. And she just wanted to make sure I didn't miss anything that was important. So I want to thank her for that. You know, I'm sorry I missed the celebration last month, but we were making our own history, and with the snow, 8 feet of snow. And Barbara showed the picture of James Michael Curley, and this is a true story. Somebody sent me a letter that James Michael Curley wrote to the president of MIT, I think back in 1915, that asked him to see if the students could come up with some ideas on how to melt the snow. So what I did was I just changed the date and the name, and I sent the same letter to him. You know, but he did. They talked about using blowtorches to melt the snow, and I was thinking about, you know, he probably was a man ahead of his time because we have the snow melters that melt the snow, you know. But it's incredible, really. You know, in all seriousness, being mayor of the city of Boston and having a partner in the Boston Foundation is so important. Because there's so many challenges that we see in the book is going to talk about, I'm sure, but when you think about the history of our city, and although some of the circumstances that might have changed, we still have a lot of the challenges. You know, the skyline is very different than it was when the Custom House Tower was built, but we still have challenges of density and how do we continue to grow as a city. When they talk about the tenements down in the North End and the kind of demolishing of the West End, we still have challenges today. How do we create more housing? How do we create more affordable housing? How do we create more middle-income housing to keep people in the city of Boston? So as I said, although the years have changed, the challenges are in some ways very similar to what we've been facing 100 years ago. I'm grateful to have the Boston Foundation as a partner in the city of Boston. I'm grateful for the great work that the Boston Foundation has done over the years here in the city. I'm grateful for the work that Boston Foundation has done with me in my brief period as mayor. And I know that if Mayor Menino was here, he would say the same thing. You know, it's always good to have that organization that helps people in so many different ways. A couple of things I want to point out. Success Boston is our partnership with the Boston Public School graduates, not just to go to college, but to help them make sure they graduate college. You know, I highlighted this program in my State of the City address, and I want to thank the Boston Foundation, who tripled its reach to over aiming at 1,000 new students, and that's an important aspect for what we have here in the city of Boston. God bless you. So I want to thank the Boston Foundation for that. I also want to thank the Boston Foundation because we sat down and we started talking about violence in the city of Boston, and the Boston Foundation had a program called Street Safe, and the city of Boston had a program called the Street Workers, and as a state representative, I sat down with many people, Danny Mulhern and other folks in the Bowdoin, Geneva area to talk about how we work to create something special, and this is back when I was a state representative. And when I became mayor of the city of Boston, the Boston Foundation was saying that, you know, we're going to look with Street Safe, maybe go a little different direction. And Commissioner Evans is here with us tonight. And I said, you know, wouldn't it be great if we could take the Street Safe program and the Street Worker program and merge them and take the best of both and put them together as one program, so we have opportunities in so many different ways and we don't lose that talent. And we sat down with Paul. And Paul went to the board, and I sat down with the board, and we talked about how we want to do this. And we came out with a program called the Violence Interrupter Program, which is taking these two programs, putting them together, and having them work on issues in our streets. We talk an awful lot in the city of Boston about violence, and when you look at all the stats across the board last year, every single stat was down. The collection of guns were off the street, but the crimes were all going down. The homicide rate was up a bit last year. If you look at the stats this year, every single one of those stats that went down last year, except with the exception of homicide, and this year, homicide, everything is down. But we still have issues in the neighborhoods that we have to get to our kids. So as we strengthen our schools, and the Boston Foundation is helping us, we need to get into the homes to help our kids on a pathway to success. And the Boston Foundation is helping us in so many ways that we're partnering with so many other groups. And so it is important for us. We need to, a city or a state can't get out of anything. It's important to have the foundation's support, and in particular, this foundation. And I'm so honored to be here tonight, to be part of this history. I'm so honored to be mayor of the city of Boston this particular moment in time. All my predecessors that were shown on the video all had unique challenges in their different times, and they were able to work through. The one common theme through every single one of them on that screen was the Boston Foundation. From James Michael Curley to Tom Menino to Marty Walsh, it's the Boston Foundation. So I look forward to working with the Boston Foundation over the course of the next, I was going to say 100 years. I don't know how long it'll be. I'm taking a day at a time right now. So, because we do want to make history. The last thing I'll say, just real quickly, because it's not really part of what I was going to talk about tonight, but because of the great advocacy, so many of you in this room, and I'm looking out in the education field, we've done some, in a very short period of time, some remarkable things in around education. We've been able to appoint 4 new Boston School Committee members for the school committee. We're able to take a person who has her expertise in early childhood education and put on the board. We're able to take a mother who's been involved in the SPED PAC and put her on the board. We've been able to take a father from West Roxbury and put him on the board. And we're able to take a woman from Jamaica Plain today and put her on the board so that our board reflects the entire community. But what's really striking to me is that we have just gone through a whole process, and Mike Contrepas is here, and he's been very helpful with that as well, and some other members I might have missed, I apologize. But the search committee has just gone through a process of finding candidates for superintendent of schools for Boston. And they've gone through this extensive many hours and hours and hours of meeting and talking and moving forward. And today we announced 4 candidates. And we announced two of the candidates just formerly superintendents of other districts around the country. 2 candidates are second in command in cities of Los Angeles and San Francisco. You talk about diversity of the candidates. We talk about their backgrounds. And I can't tell you how pleased I am with the 4 people that have been put forth to us to go public it's going public today, but go public over the next week to get interviews. And you think about what the future of Boston is. And I've had brief meetings with each of the 4 candidates. And every single one of them have said to me, Boston's unique because it's the right size district to make an impact, to make a change, to make sure that we can show how urban education should be delivered in the United States of America. Every single one of them said that to me. And that struck me because as I think about the history, I think about the history of the Boston Public Schools. And I think about the people, the leaders of that system. And I'm going to mention them again. I think of Mike Contrepas, who was able to take the district and shift it here. And I was able to see Carol Johnson be able to take the district and shift it here, and see John McDonough's work and shift it here. And the foundation, just like this foundation's ground has been laid. And now we're at a point in time, with the help of the Boston Foundation and a lot of you in this room, that we can really make the difference in the Boston Public Schools that we've been talking about forever. We've made great incremental changes as time goes on. Governor Patrick signed that piece of legislation, education reform. I was proud to support that legislation and work hard for that legislation. Now I'm proud to say that we are truly going to have a superintendent who, like some of the superintendents before him, have been dynamic and really want to make the change. I'll finish with this. When they came into me and said, Boston is the city that we want to come into to truly make change in education. The reason why they made that statement is because of work like this foundation has done for 100 years and have laid the groundwork that people say, wow, Boston's a special place. Thank you, happy anniversary, and have a great night.
Mayor, we can't thank you enough for your presence, your generosity of spirit, but more than anything, your commitment to this city. It truly is extraordinary and inspiring. I find that it's kind of a high-risk proposition to have that Barbara Hindley slideshow because it brings tears to my eyes. But seriously. The foundation has been so intertwined with the life of the city and all of the things, the twists and turns and the rises and the falls of Boston to work at this place and feel like you're part of this continuing effort over such time is really a great feeling, and the support that all of you have given the foundation, particularly as we have experimented and changed our role pretty dramatically in the city, has been most gratifying. You know, we are a city that is renowned at this point for its innovation in so many areas, certainly medicine, the life sciences, business, politics, education. But the history that we've, Gene, tells us that the spirit of innovation has been very present in the social sector as well, in healthcare and education, housing, the arts, social services. And Bostonians from all walks of life have looked around and imagined ways to build a better city. And in so many cases, the Boston Foundation was privileged to be there at the beginning, to support those leaders. And we are proud that a deep dedication to social justice connects everything the Boston Foundation has tried to do over the last 100 years. The impulse to help people who are trying to get a foothold on that fabled ladder of opportunity. We have dedicated this book to the Boston Foundation's donors who have made everything that we've been able to do possible. They are and always have been the lifeblood of the Boston Foundation. So again, we're so complimented at your presence tonight, to have the police commissioner, to have the mayor, and so many of you, many of our board members are here tonight. I'd like to bring Mary Jo up again to invite us to the climax of this, which has something to do with a cake, I think.
I have nothing else to say but to continue to drink, party, and have cake. And Mayor, thank you so much for coming.
Barbara.